Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethea. And you know, if you join us on a regular basis, the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethea, and you know if you join us on a regular basis, the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC captures that power for your financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with increasing market share for African and African American owned renewable energy companies to address the high energy costs at our historically Black colleges and universities, to utilize back on farmlands at HBCU campuses to develop capacity and initiative for renewable energy projects to bring down the and underemployment of young African and African American men and women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. Also to educate the African and the African American community about the economic impacts of climate change and the need for environmental education through Black Talk Radio programs such as Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. This show is also brought to you every week by the National Association of Blacks in Solar. Also, this show is also brought to you every week by the Black Sports Legends Foundation, BSLF HBCU Solar Radio Talk Show Initiative. And you can get more information on that initiative by logging on to our website at positivechangepc.com. That's positivechangepc.com. Also, ladies and gentlemen, if you join us on a regular basis, you know that we've been working on trying to develop a new platform to broadcast this show. We previously were using the platform of Blog Talk Radio. We're now experimenting and working several platforms. We're working presently broadcasting over the platform of Podbean, and we're looking at other options as we are broadcasting today. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a scheduled guest for today's show, but we've gone into our archives and we pulled out some information that we think is very much needed and needs to be shared with the African American community as it relates to what is going on in the renewable energy sector. And one of these things that we're going to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen, you can log on to our website at positivechangepc.com. That's positivechangepc.com. You can click on our news and events tab, and you will be able to join us as we are looking at our lead off subject matter today, the Trump administration, environmental justice removes cuts across several agencies. Now, all you'll have to do, ladies and gentlemen, to get to that article, all you'll have to do is click on our news and events tab, and you want to stroll down to that link. And what we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, is the a number of things that have taken place as relates to the Trump administration signing these executive orders, which are basically playing out here in Washington, D.C., and it's creating quite a bit of concerns as federal workers are being laid off from key agencies that are necessary for us if you are in the renewable energy sector, you're quite aware of the fact that the initial executive orders that were signed by the Trump administration has in fact frozen $96.7 billion in contracts which have been executed with our federal government. And these contracts represent some 66,000 projects across all areas of business in construction, bridges. Also, when we begin to look at the Inflation Reduction Act, we're talking about various initiatives which were initiated and signed into law during the Biden and Harris administration. And one of those such initiatives was the Solar for All initiative, which started here in Washington, D.C. in 2011. It was started by Mr. Ted Trabue, who was then the director of DCSEU. He now serves on the D.C. Public Service Commission along with Mr. Mark Davis, who is the founder and operator of WDC Solar, which operates here in Washington, D.C., along with the gentleman who we know as the NFL Hall of Famer of the Burgundy and Gold, Mr. Darrell Green. They started the Solar for All pilot program here in Washington, D.C. in 2011. And you will find that that pilot program was picked up by the Biden and Harris administration through the agency of the EPA. And it was, in fact, a part of what they would call the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which some $7 billion was put in that program, which went out to 60 grantees, state, nonprofit entities who were vetted and went through that process. But when you, in fact, go through the executive orders and look at what has taken place by the Trump administration in his first day, he signed executive orders rescinding those executive orders which were signed into law. And one of those executive orders was 14008, which in fact, as I've indicated, there is $96.7 billion in federal contracting opportunities and funding, which was in fact signed off, executed, and through this process, there has been a rash of litigation that has come forward. So what we want to do, ladies and gentlemen, we want to look at how the Trump administration, who I refer to as COVID 45 plus 2, looking at 24 felony counts coming straight at you. We are going to speak truth to power on this platform or whatever platform that we will be using to get this information out to the American people. Here on the platform of Solar Now, we're proud to know that we are producing our 405th show today over the platform of Solar Now and the future with its economic impact on Black America. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at what was recently published by in a online news publication called the Government Executive, and it was authored by Cardine Cardell, who's the managing director. And this was published on February the 14th, 2025. Agency leaders placed nearly 200 of the on administrative leave as they wound down programs at the DOJ, Department of Justice, DOE, Department of Energy, and the Environmental Protection Agency. More reports surfaced this week on personnel cuts within multiple agencies across offices with employees tied to environmental justice programs going on administrative leave. Now, this was one of our major concerns, ladies and gentlemen, as we, in fact, did speak to trying to get individuals at the Department of Energy, and we're speaking in reference to the office of EJE. And we will speak to that, ladies and gentlemen, because we had the opportunity of having on this platform Mrs. Shalea Marset, who took over after Mrs. Shalonda Baker left the agency, and she served over that team at DOE. And I had the opportunity of having her on this platform, and we talked about the various programs that they had launched nationally. And you'll be able to find that information when you go to our website. You can go to our archives and you can look at our last month's archives, which will be January, and you can click on and you'll see a press release requesting the Biden-Harris administration to codify the offices of EJE across all 6 federal agencies. And you will find how important and what those specific programs were. And we're going to look into that here on the show today, here on the platform of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. But we're going to go back now and look at the Wall Street Journal reported Thursday, and that was of the week of the 14th, which is basically several news outlets confirmed that the Environmental Protection Agency Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights had placed 170 employees on administrative leave. The OEJECR, you can go to their website, handles both federal civil rights law disputes and applicants on federal financial assistance from the agency, as well as conflict resolutions, helping ensure the treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origins, tribal affiliations, or disability in the agency decision-making and other federal agencies that affect human health and environment. CNN reported that acting assistant administrator of the Office of Environmental Justice and the executive external civil rights, Teresa Sava, told OEJECR employees on a call Thursday that those that perform 50% or greater duties in the environmental justice on non-statutory work would be placed on administrative leave. The move comes as Attorney General Pam Bondi issued a memo Wednesday. Now let's look at what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We know that you had 23 states, including Anthony Brown, who is the Attorney General for the state of Maryland, here where I reside, who filed lawsuits surrounding these actions that have been taken. We also know that the members of the Democratic House and Senate have been holding protest rallies here in Washington, D.C. with the unions and organized labor, ASME, and other organizations that represent the federal workforce. And when you're talking about the attacking these federal workers, ladies and gentlemen, you're not just talking about things that don't affect everyone, because without our federal workers here in Washington, D.C., there are no Social Security checks going out to those who may be baby boomers who have retired and left their jobs. I've had the privilege of being on several uh, Zoom calls as well as phone calls with my representative here in the state of Maryland, Senator Van Hollen, and Senator also Brooks held a call the other evening. They had 17,000 people on that one phone call. And there were all kinds of concerns around these executive orders and this actions that's been taken by the Trump administration. At the Energy Department's web pages on the Department of Environmental Justice and publications known as the Office of Energy Justice Policy and Analysis now direct you to DOE's homepage outlining Trump's administration plan to restore energy dominance. Well, we know that that's a joke. That's not funny, because we are very, very privy to the fact that Governor Joseph Shapiro from the state of Pennsylvania filed a lawsuit last December. That lawsuit was joined by Governor Wes Moore of Maryland and 13 other states. This specific litigation was filed with the Federal Regulatory Commission here in Washington, D.C., which was impacting, you ready for this? 65 million consumers in 13 states, and the rate increase would have gone into orbit on June 1st of this year, 2025, costing customers some $21 billion for electricity rates for fiscal year 2025 and 2026. Now, what is all this about? This plays into who put the money up behind the current president to be elected. When we begin to look at the gas, oil, and natural gas, oil, and coal industry. Now, we know and we're very, very aware of the fact that this plays out through the organizations that control and regulate the cost of energy. And here in the DMV market area, we are a part of what they call the PJM region, which is comprised of 13 states and Washington, D.C., which were being impacted by this rate increase. And this was created not by accident, by design, because the PJM has the worst track record in the country on bringing on renewable energy projects. There are some 3,000 projects that have been sitting in the queue for the last 4 years. And the problem has, these are renewable energy projects, which are wind and solar. You will also find out that the Trump administration has suspended or permitting for and wind projects. And there are very, very questionable issues around the solar industry. Now, yours truly, I had the privilege of serving as the president of the National Association of Blacks in Solar over the last 5 years. And I am now the current chairman of the board of directors for the National Association of Blacks in Solar. So as we begin to drill down on this program today and look at what is taking place as it relates to the renewable energy sector, I had the privilege of speaking to one of our board members yesterday, and you can go to our website and you can go to Mr. Tony Henderson's organization, Imbalance, and he will share some of that information concerning that. Now, we are looking at, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very serious, very serious situation as it relates to us being able to work and move forward around the platforms and issues facing uh, this barrage of executive orders, which we're going to look at those executive orders and actually what they do mean in terms of time and space in the marketplace. Now, in doing so, we want to be able to, for our listening audience to be aware that we are looking at executive orders that are impacting and playing a serious role as it relates to what is going on when you open the mailbox and you pull your gas, water, and electricity bills out. You will find that there has been a substantial increase in rates in the PJM region that we're being hit with. And Mrs. The present head of the People's Council here in Washington, D.C., has spoken to that issue, uh, and it has been one that is a very serious issue, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we are still trying to navigate and move around and talk about other issues that are of of various importance that plays right into what we're talking about in our discussion here, ladies and gentlemen. And one of those things is the appointment of Russell Balt, who is the champion of the Schedule F and slashing agency budgets. He gets confirmed through the House and the Senate when, in fact, last Wednesday night, there was an all-night session in the House concerning his nomination because he's one of the authors of what we would know we're referring to as the playbook put out by the Heritage Foundation called 2025. Now, we needed to look at what does this mean as it relates to those of us who reside in the African American community. Now, as I indicated to you, this confirmation of this gentleman, the Senate last Thursday confirmed Russell Balt to serve as the Office of Management and Budget Director, directing director, excuse me, director as it relates to sending him back to the White House because he served in Trump's first administration. Now, there has been some very serious questions about his conflict of interest because he comes from the energy sector and where he is coming from. So the White House veteran enrolled has garnered controversy for his adversarial practices with the federal workforce and openness of subverting federal spending laws. Vaught, who served as the OMB director at the end of Trump's first term, won approval in the party. Now, Vaught won pundits, and this is the problem that many of us who are who have voted for the Democratic ticket, and people are having some serious problems with what is going on as it relates to these entities and powers to be being able to continue to function as they're functioning, as they are eroding the rights of the American public. Now, Trump has reinstated his policy on originally known as Schedule Left. So this was a part of the discussion that came up on the Zoom call last week, and President Trump signed a series of executive orders Monday targeting the rights of federal workers and rolling back telework uses of federal agencies ahead Trump's inauguration. Transition officials touted that the new president would sign upwards to 200 executive orders on Monday, including the immigration enforcement pardons for those who participated in the January 6, 2021 assault on the U.S. Capitol, and hiring freezes for most of the federal workforce in the Oval Office. Now, all of this took place. Now, all these things are taking place, ladies and gentlemen. Former President Biden initial disband of the initiative when he took on in 2021 in his term. The Office of Personnel Management issued regulations defining policies relating to positions that the current list of roughly 4,000 political appointees throughout the government. Trump's edited task OPM promptly unwinding these regulations. Now, this is very, 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 very important as it relates to the solar industry, because I had several conversations on yesterday when I spoke with, in fact, Mr. Tony Henderson of Imbalance, who is a member of our board of directors, asking him what impact would this have on projects in the field. And he indicated to me that it shuts down a large percentage of opportunities that are depending on federal grant funding. And when you're talking about $96.7 billion, you're not talking about something just impacting a few people. You're talking about millions of people that are being impacted directly in the marketplace. Here in the state of Maryland, I had the privilege of speaking to some folks at the Maryland Clean Energy Center, who was the entity that was the grantee for the state of Maryland to receive the $62 million for the Solar for All funding for the state. And the lady said, look, we're looking at $137 million that have been frozen. And all of these frozen funds, by freezing these funds on executed contracts, puts us in limbo. So this is what is going on around the country as it relates to the renewable energy sector, ladies and gentlemen. We are past a rock and a hard place as it relates to the marketplace. and we need to be acting like that and serious about this because we're dealing with some very, very, very serious matters as it relates to this. Now, in the most of the bureaucrats are being fired, they are gone. Trump said at a rally Monday afternoon while referring to his planned signing to freeze all new federal regulations, it would be all of them. And when an aide handled Trump's Schedule F orders to sign on Monday, Trump remarked, "We're getting rid of all the cancer and the cancer caused by the Biden-Harris administration." This is absolutely insanity, ladies and gentlemen. Do you realize that when the crash took place at Washington National Airport it had been several weeks ago, just several weeks ago. It had been a month ago that you had a shortage of air traffic controllers in the control tower because some people were released and let go. I'm not making this up. This is what's been reported here in the local media. And a lot of things are coming out now concerning the people who are tasked with protecting our airways, with looking at and examining the uh, impact on the agricultural industry as it relates to the virus, which is affecting the poultry industry. And we found out that they fired the inspectors. I mean, this is the madness that we're living in. But when people were trying to warn people and tell people about the impact of this election, I coined it the return of Jim Crow in 24. And a lot of folks didn't like it, but it, as it relates to the African American community, folks can relate to that and know that because many of us who may be in my age grew up in that era. So it's not something that's that far removed from today's uh, society because many of us who are baby boomers grew up in those restricted covenants and those times. And one of the things that was very disturbing to me as I did this show and I began to get feedback from various folk about what was going on was the fact that people don't want to have this discussion. Well, guess what? We're going to have that discussion here on this platform of Solar Now in the future with its economic impact on Black America because the Executive Order 14008 indicated, let's be very, very clear, that 40% of the $1.7 trillion, which was spent over the last 4 years, had to be directed at low and moderate income communities. That did not mean low and moderate income communities of color. It said low and moderate income communities. So that means white folks, minority communities, blacks, Asians, Pacific Islanders, and is and other communities around this country are all were this money had to be directed at those communities and those communities that were disproportionately, which have been impacted in states like Mississippi and Louisiana, what they call Cancer Alley. And in those uh, refineries, all refineries, and they are all put in African American communities. And if you haven't traveled down and seen the problems that exist with people with their health, then you won't know what we're talking about. But if you know what the terminology was referred to as EJ communities, And that was what the executive orders that Trump signed, which did away with the EJ offices. And those two executive orders was the executive order 13985. And if you followed me, you've heard me speak about executive order, which was signed by President Biden on January the 20th, 2021, advancing racial equality and support for in that executive order. And executive order 1408 was signed January the 27th, 2021, tackling climate crisis at home and abroad. Now, these are executive orders that are just a few of the executive orders that were signed. And if you go to the news and events tab on our website, you will be able to find out that there are a rash of executive orders that have been signed under by Trump, rescinding these orders across these federal agencies. And we know that everybody's going to feel the pain. Everybody's going to feel the pain. And many of those folks who thought that they weren't going to feel the pain, and as though it was going to just affect those African American, Hispanic, Native American, and Latino communities, those poor white communities are going to be impacted the same way. Because what this is about, ladies and gentlemen, let's be very, very clear. This is about taking from the poor and giving tax breaks to the billionaires in this country. And if you saw the inauguration, you saw who was sitting behind Trump at his inauguration. So Zuckerberg and Musk and the crew, and they don't mean any good to me and you. They're looking out for their own interests. But they sort of got played too, because now that you have Elon Musk, who is heading an organization called DOS, Development of Government Efficiency, the Agency to Development for Energy Efficiency. But see, the problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, that was not created by Congress, that agency, and nobody elected Musk. He's a private citizen. He has no rights to be able to go into the Treasury Department. He has no right to go into the Social Security Department and pull your private information. Now, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you know that there has been a tremendous outcry from the congressional levels. But my problem was where were the Democrats? Because they did act as though they did not know this was coming. Now we are looking at a number of midterm elections in 2026, and we see our local elections as people are running for mayors, county executives, city councils, and things that are pocketbook issues are not being addressed, ladies and gentlemen. Here in the state of Maryland, I have been beating the drum around the fact that we needed to look at how the eligibility limits on state and federal energy assistance programs should be raised. And one of those reasons is because, ladies and gentlemen, using the state of Maryland, when we look at the state of Maryland with 22 counties, the two wealthiest counties in the state are Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And as it relates to the energy assistance program, when you compare that with the numbers that are actually coming from the department that qualify people to be able to get some help from the agencies to help pay their utility bills, we're looking at a rock and a hard place for many folks. Now, what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that many of you are unaware that Washington, D.C. itself operates under the federal area of median income. And this impacts low and moderate income energy assistance programs, LEAP programs for Maryland and energy. Program provides assistance for low and moderate income consumers with home heating payments. Payments are made for supplier directly to the utility company. Now, let's look at what those income numbers are. Here in Montgomery County, which is our wealthiest county in the state, for one person, it is $2,430. That's looking at what a person's income was the past 30 days when you go in to apply. But that breaks down to $29,429 annually. For family of two, it's $3,387. That breaks down to $39,444 annually. But monthly, you can only have had, for a family of two, $3,287 coming in, whether that was from your Social Security, if you have some kind of IRA, or where you worked, which I feel strongly should not be considered, but that's what it is. For three, family of three is $4,143. That's $49,000 a year. Family of four, $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. Now let's look at what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about a market in the DMV market area with the median income for a new starter house starting at $500,000, $500,000. If you begin to try to qualify on these incomes, and you go to a bank or you go to a realtor, they're going to basically tell you, well, you need to be able to get into a first-time home buyers program so you can get some help, some assistance in order for you to get into a home, because you're not going to be able to afford to live in a tree house. Now, when we look over at Prince George's County, which is, it starts at $3,406 for family of one, family of two, and that breaks down to $40,872 annually. Family of two, a family of one, a person can't make more than $2,510 that came in that previous month before you went and applied for help. Okay, and that's $15 an hour, which is $30,000 a month. For two, it's $3,406, which is $40,000, $872 annually. Monthly, that breaks down once again $3,406. Three, $4,303. That's $51,000, and that goes all the way down to eight. Now, let's look at what the federal area median income is in the District of Columbia. It starts at, for one person, same energy assistance programs. And this is what the federal government says: if you don't make this much money, you are poor. One person, $57,571. Okay, that's annually. When you break that down, that's about 4,700 and something dollars a month, which is twice as much than what it is in Maryland for the two wealthiest counties in Maryland. For two, $75,286. You divide it by 12, that'll give you your monthly income prior to you applying for help in the District of Columbia. For three is $93,100 for three people, 93,000. For four is $110,715. For five is $128,429. For six is $146,144. For seven is $149,465. And for eight is $152,787. And all you have to do is divide it by 12, ladies and gentlemen, and that will give you your breakdown for what it is to qualify for energy assistance in the District of Columbia and for those programs such as the Solar for All program, because if you qualify for the LEAP program, you automatically come under the income eligibility cap. In Maryland, they are entirely too low. Now we have a rash of thousands of employees being laid off in the federal government, who in fact are federal employees who live in the state of Maryland. And when they go to apply for the energy assistance programs, for whatever the reason may have, you may have sickness in your family. But if you're laid off and you're trying to juggle with maintaining kids in school and everything else, it takes this much money to not be comfortable, but to maintain your household, ladies and gentlemen. And these people will not be able to get help. So here at the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, we have undertaking a campaign where we are reaching out to elected officials here in the state of Maryland, asking them to please raise the income eligibility limits on these energy assistance programs so people can, in fact, afford to stay in their homes. Because with this weather being what it is, you see me right now as I am sitting in one of my offices outside of my home, and it is very, 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 very cold, ladies and gentlemen. And people cannot manage this extreme cold and with the changes in the weather patterns. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, there's a tremendous um, um, uh, a lot at stake as we look at what's playing out as Trump is signing these executive orders, which is creating havoc. And that's what we're talking about. And this is not an accident. This is by design. So as we begin to look at some of those executive orders and things that are going on in through the uh, Biden and Trump administration, we know that this is going to hit home for all of you. And it's not just going to affect the people here in the DMV market area. So that's the reality it is, because when Trump was talking about draining the swamp, and let's be real about this thing, because of the lack of opportunities in the public and private sector, African Americans specifically. I had the privilege of listening to the chairman of the National Black Chamber of Commerce here in Washington D.C., who was on uh, Roland Martin's show, the Black Star Network, and he spoke about the fact who has been the largest beneficiary of contracting opportunities through the federal government, and he looked at fiscal year 2023, and it relates to the almost $1 trillion budget in government contracts. It was 800 and I think 40 billion. I think about $200 billion of that was in fact going that goes to the Pentagon. So it was $640 billion that was spent in 2023. African Americans received 1.5% of that, which breaks down to about $10 billion out of 640 billion in contracting opportunities. Hispanics was 1.8, uh, Asians was around 1.9, but 78% of those contracts went to white women. Now, this is problematic when we begin to look at the actual numbers at the polls on who voted to put Trump in the position so that he could execute these rescind these executive orders that was put in place by Biden. And I very much strongly recommend that you go to my website at positivechangepc.com, and you want to click on our news and events tab, and you want to stroll down and look at those executive orders and how they're going to impact who you are and you in your community, and as things play out, because they're going to play out, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake about this. This is not a joke, and it's definitely not funny. And we are in the middle of a situation where we are attempting to maintain and keep things going as it relates to our everyday lives. Now, we know that many of you who are listening to me, the sound of my voice here over on our YouTube channel, we are trying to we are live streaming this show today, and you'll be able to go to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to listen to today's broadcast here on the platform of Solar Now in the Future with its economic impact on Black America. We are still struggling with some of these new platforms because everything is moved to an app format, and it's very difficult to do the live streams and the podcasts on based on the platform format that Blog Talk created, which was a very user-friendly uh, type of platform. And we are going to keep working at this and keep working at this to bring you this information. Now, we would like for you to log on to our website, and we want you to go over to our GoFundMe link. And we urgently need your support, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever you can give, whatever you can give, you can click on our news and events tab and go through uh, our database, which we feel we have the most comprehensive database that looks at politics, policies as relates to energy, energy related, renewable energy and renewable energy areas. Even though we named this show Solar Now in the Future with its economic impact on Black America, some 5 years ago, and we branded this, and we are working tirelessly trying to get our numbers up so people can really hear what I'm saying and go to our blog, and it is backed up by data. These are not things I just come on the airways with and just talk to be talking. We back this up with data, and like I said, it is an, there's a very urgent situation where we need people to be clear about what's going on in their environment and what's going on around them as relates to the times that we're dealing with. Now, there was another specific article that looked at how the Trump administration gave many of the supervisors at these federal agencies uh, less than 24 hours to turn around and justify who was going to keep a job at their agencies. And they had less than 200 characters that they could put in the text. And everybody who was not what they call tenured in, and that's what this whole thing is about with Schedule F. So where you have people who have 20 and 30 years in the civil service inside these federal agencies, they want them to basically reduce them or buy them out. What's very, very interesting about this is that because people are always looking for something but nothing. We all do. Everybody want a deal. Well, the deal that was put on the table is not funded. Senator Van Hollen made that very, very, very clear. Congressman Glenn Ivey made it very, very clear. I was also on privileged to be on another Zoom call with my congressman and Senator Van Hollen. They had 14,000 people on that specific call. So, but just between those two calls alone, over 30,000 Marylanders chimed in to hear from Senator Van Hollen, Alston Brooks, and Congressman Glenn Ivey. And as I indicated, the state of Maryland has over 150,000 federal workers here. So it's going to be have a major impact on the economy. Now, there has been lawsuits levied by the 23 U.S. attorneys that have filed lawsuits concerning this freeze and how this funding is impacting on people's lives, because it is, and that's real. But ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And we hope we brought you news that you definitely can use here on the platform of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact. And remember, this show is brought to you every week by the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC, which serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with decreasing market share for African and African American renewable energy companies to address the high energy costs at our historically Black colleges and universities, to utilize Black-owned farmlands and HBCU campuses, to develop capacity and initiatives for renewable energy projects to bring down the underemployment of young African and African American men and women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. It's also brought to you every week by the Black Sports Legends Foundation, BSLF HBCU Solar Radio Talk Show Initiative. And you're listening to that initiative through our online YouTube, the PCPC Online Digital Podcast Radio TV Network. And we will continue to try to bring these shows to you. And until next week, we don't want you to meet us here. We want you to meet us back here as we end another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Until next week, we say go in peace as we close another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on